everyone. I'm Steven Zickman.
And I'm Mike Matinee.
And this is the Weekly Movie Throwdown, where each week we look at two films that have some similarity and try to figure out which one is better. This week, it's a throwdown between two stories of B-movie filmmakers. From 1993, it's Matinee, directed by Joe Dante, going up against Tim Burton's Ed Wood from 1 year later in 1994. Both of these are super fun, and I think we're going to have a good time talking about them. But before we get into that conversation, Mike, do you have any wins of the week you want to shout out?
Nothing much on the win front. Watched the season finale of The Pit, and I really like The Pit. I think it's a really good show. So that's kind of my win of the week.
That baby. Oh.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
And we still don't know what happened to the baby. But I do have a loss of the week.
Oh.
which is AI Val Kilmer, which I just have to mention.
God. Yeah.
So they released a trailer with the AI Val Kilmer, and I understand, and he was signed to the movie, he wanted to do it, they feel like he was spiritually connected to it. I get it, but you're opening up a can of worms that is just very problematic, and I'm not a fan. So I just think dredging up old actors in AI is just not a good precedent to set, no matter what.
Yeah, it's never going to be good. I haven't watched it yet, but there's a Red Hot Chili Peppers documentary on Netflix about Hillel Slovak, their original guitarist. Apparently there's some AI Hillel in that, which kind of turned me off to it.
That's not cool.
Also, apparently this week, Steven Soderbergh announced a few upcoming projects and made it clear that he's totally leaning into AI to help him do these films. So pretty
Really?
disappointing to me. I actually was going to go see his new film, The Christophers. And when I found that out, I canceled it. I'm not boycotting him necessarily, but I had to sit with it for a little bit. But, we talked about,
that's really disappointing.
We talked about him as a filmmaker last week who just kind of uses the tools at his disposal and is very experimental to make, small films and move on. And I think this is part of that. I don't agree with it. I don't love it, but it's kind of what he does. So I'm not all that surprised by it. Just a little disappointed.
Yeah, again, I do get it in theory. I think we just have to see what he does with it. Again, using it to create a deceased actor out of whole cloth is disturbing to me.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what Soderbergh is planning on, so maybe we'll give him the benefit of the doubt and see what he's actually going to do.
Maybe he's working with Ben Affleck on this, with this new AI company that he created. You hear about that?
Only peripherally. I really dived into it.
Sold it to Netflix, apparently. So it's...
Yeah, what could go wrong with that? Netflix already doesn't believe in theaters. I'm not really sure they believe in actors either, so I guess we'll see what happens.
Believe in nothing tangible anymore.
We're just going to sit in quiet rooms by ourselves watching fake actors on Netflix.
Just all in VR headsets. I mean, they're truly just
our glorious future.
Black Mirror episode.
Mm-hmm.
A couple wins of the week for me. Watch a lot of films this week. One that I want to shout out that I've seen a million times just because I always want to shout it out is Rosemary's Baby, which kind of ties into this because it's produced by William Castle, who we're going to talk about later. But God, this movie's awesome. It's just, I look at it through this gaslighting lens now that I didn't fully look at it through before, but that's such a prominent thing in our country, in our world now, just this institutional gaslighting. And watching Rosemary's Baby through that lens is a little harrowing, but it's just such a good movie. One of my top 4 on Letterboxd because I love it so much. Also watch First Reformed. Have you ever seen that?
I did.
Man,
actually.
It's a dark film too. It's from
super
Paul
dark.
Schrader, writer of Taxi Driver, part of his Lonely Man unofficial trilogy that includes this and The Card Counter and The Master Gardener. It's about Ethan Hawke as a minister who sort of has a crisis of faith when he's, I guess, awakened to the idea of where the world is heading through some parishioners who are environmentalists. seeks refuge in the comfort of Amanda Seyfried, as we all would, and that sort of leaves it ambiguous at the end. But it's a dark portrait of a crisis of faith, and Ethan Hawke is just incredibly good in it. So really, really recommend it if you can watch it. But on to bigger and brighter things for this week. Our films are a lot of fun that we're going to talk about this week. Do you have any history with either of these films?
Well, I was just gonna say, saying that they're a lot of fun. I think the thing that ties them together, besides the fact that they connect B movie makers, is that they're two movies that treat really dark subjects in a really light way, which is when you really think about it. I mean, that's what's so interesting about both movies. They're like they both are like the Born in the USA of movies almost, where they're the underlying themes are very dark, but it's the lens that is used is actually very bright. So I can't stop thinking about that. But do I have history with it? I don't think I'd ever seen Matinee. I have a hard time remembering if I ever did. Yeah, and I'm not sure that I have because I was surprised by a lot of things when I was watching it. Ed Wood, obviously seen multiple times, and I think we did it for the previous pod back in the day. So definitely have some history there.
Did we do it? I can't remember that. For re-Oscar?
We did, yeah, for re-Oscar we did that year, I believe. So I think we watched it for that.
It's funny you mention Born in the USA because one of the people in one of these films directed that video.
That is true. Yeah, I actually looked it up. I wasn't sure if it was John
Yeah.
Sayles, and then I looked it up to be sure because I was pretty surprised.
I should mention that I threw this throwdown out there because I'm a big fan of William Castle. As you know, if you listen to the show, we did 13 Ghosts back in October. If you're watching on video, I have a lovely Tingler poster over my shoulder here that I designed because I'm just so in love with the guy. And his birthday is April 24th. So I just thought it would be fun to celebrate him by looking at a film that's does no hiding of the fact that it's William Castle in the film, even though it's fictional in Matinee. And Joe Dante's a big fan. He's very out about it, and he's in documentaries about William Castle. Just really loves the guy. So yeah, I thought it would be fun to put him in the spotlight this week. And what better way to do it than to compare him to Ed Wood, who was kind of a contemporary and maybe didn't have as much success as Castle did, even though Castle didn't have very much success at all. But he's sort of more well known as
Yeah, that's saying
yeah.
something. having had less success.
I mean, the success that Ed Wood has is for being the worst filmmaker of all time. I mean, there's some notoriety to the fact that he's just bad at his job, and that's kind of why he's remembered.
Yeah, there's just something kind of wonderful about the fact that the reason Ed Wood's popularity increased is after he was named the worst director of all time, and I think that's just such a speaks to us as humans. We're like, well, I gotta see this guy now. Like it's the worst. Like if he was just kind of the worst, no one would care. But being called the absolute worst, well, now I need to check out all these movies. This is something great.
We'll dig into Ed Wood after Matinee, but what I was thinking about at the end of Ed Wood when he's like, "This is what I'll be remembered for." Thinking he's very akin to Tommy Wiseau, but Tommy Wiseau lived through being proclaimed as the worst director for The Room, and Ed Wood kind of died before being given that moniker. So I saw a lot of parallels between him and Tommy Wiseau, which maybe isn't a good
Yeah,
thing.
that would have been an interesting twofer. But yeah, well, I like this one.
Yeah, I mean, any chance to watch Matinee, I'm very happy to do it. So let's jump into talking about Matinee. This is directed by Joe Dante. Handful of writers on it. Jericho Stone has the original script, but story by goes to Charles S. Haas, who actually tried to get a screenplay credit by taking his case to the WGA, and they said no. And then a couple other people who aren't credited on it either. So kind of went through a lot of iterations. DP is John Hora, who's very much Joe Dante's guy. And Rick Baker did the effects, as he did on Ed Wood and won an Oscar for. So um, here's what it's about. In October 1962, the Cuban Missile Crisis occurred and the menace of nuclear war loomed over the American South. Low-budget filmmaker Lawrence Woolsey was in Key West, Florida, debuting his new film Mant, and thought the prevailing mood of fear surrounding the premiere was perfect to stir up excitement. A group of local teenagers prepared for the film's opening night, experiencing small crises of their own. And I think what that sort of encapsulates there is all of the different stories that are in this. I mean, you have this big looming Cuban Missile Crisis at the time, and it's situated in Key West, which is kind of like ground zero for it. I can't imagine how terrifying it must have been at this time to be going through that, especially in Key West, because it's right there. And then you have this film release, and it kind of makes me think about how people turn to horror in really dark times for some reason. Like it's really kind of comforting in a way to see it on screen, and yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and that's what he talks about. I appreciate that's what Lawrence Woolsey talks about. That it's a place where you can go and kind of face your fears and come out and be okay. And so I get it in some ways that it allows you to face your fears, but get a resolution to them, which makes you feel better about them. Unlike the actual fear that's hanging over you, which you can't get a resolution for. So it does make sense. And obviously, yeah, the 50s were a huge time for communist related horror movies and things about nuclear fallout. And it was a great time for B movies.
I'm really invested in the atomic age films after watching this, because I don't know if you saw, but a lot of the posters on the walls in the theater were movies of that time about similar things. And one of them was a film that was my win of the week a couple weeks ago, Panic in Year Zero, the Ray Milland film. So it's very much like of this era, and I'm just kind of lean into it because this has me really excited about it. So expect a lot of wins of the week from this time period in the upcoming weeks.
Yeah, it's really clear what affection Joe Dante has for. I mean, I'm assuming this is his childhood. I mean, it lines up. So, this period of time and the movies that were made. I mean, Mant is such a fantastic recreation of so many of those B movies that came out during that time. And and obviously there's little nods to it where you have what's his name from Invasion of the Body Snatchers, Kevin McCarthy is plays the general, and I mean it's just a person that really understands the history of those films, and if you know them, he's nodding to you. So it's a nice little, and that's how I felt about the movie in general. The entire movie feels a little bit like an in joke amongst movie nerds, which might be why it wasn't as successful as it probably should have been. But I think it's a movie made by movie nerds for movie nerds, and that's the people that really take to it because you get all the little jokes, you see all the people you recognize, and there's a certain wink and a nod to us who kind of get it.
It's a real love letter to movie going too, just to the experience of being in a theater. And uh, the original story of it that Jericho Stone brought forward was that it was going to be kids in a movie theater just sort of reliving through memories their experiences going to these B movies and having like the projectionist dressed as a vampire and like this collective experience that happened in the 50s. And then it was going to end with them coming back to the theater, and it will have been turned into a video store, which I think is such an interesting commentary. But uh, Universal wanted no part of that. They couldn't put that together. So they went through a lot of rewrites and eventually landed on what they have now. But initially, it was going to be a horror movie actor going to a premiere. And then one of the writers who came in said, well, let's make it a director. And that of course Joe Dante is going to land on William Castle because he loves the guy. And what better way to create a story around a premiere in the 50s than having William Castle incorporate all these gimmicks? And so the studio was interested in that. They finally sold it, but they had a lot of independent financing that eventually dropped out, which I think is also something we see in Ed Wood. And it's kind of a testament to the independent filmmaker, which it kind of carries over through these. And Universal just decided to pony up all of the money instead of just distributing it. But it flopped, because they blew it out wide, whereas Dante said he saw it as kind of a Miramax thing that released sort of quietly here and there and built buzz and then opened wider and wider. But they just threw it into theaters in February, and not the place to do it.
February.
Yeah.
Wow. That's I don't. Yeah, Dark movie in February alone tells you that they didn't believe that much in it. That's problematic. I really liked the premise of the idea that we're going back to a time where filmmakers had to sell their own films. I mean, Woolsey's literally in a car and driving the movie from state to state and premiering it, trying to drum up buzz and screens on his own. And it's a part of filmmaking that we really don't think about, because we just think of everything through these giant studios. But back then, independent filmmakers, they really had to literally go door to door trying to sell a movie like you were selling Bibles. And I just love that aspect of it.
I mean, they still do that. We have these studios promoting everything now, but there are so many filmmakers still doing this. And what I find interesting about Matinee is that the reason William Castle did that and the reason Lawrence Woolsey has to do that is because they were battling television. So films were dying out, and you see like premium formats like VistaVision, like CinemaScope, all to combat people sitting at home watching television. And that's exactly what we're going through today with IMAX and D-Box and all of these things to fight streaming. So it's very much today exactly what it was in 1960, which is just fascinating.
Yeah, the sign on the theater the banner hanging on the front says "Fight Pay TV," which is nice. I mean, it's right. Yeah, it's right there.
Yeah, and it's just still. I want to get that banner and hang it in my house or something because it's still true. There's kind of a coming of age story in this too, and that's a part of what makes it so great is that not only do you have this big William Castle aspect, but you have this kid, Gene, who is an army brat. And that's a great story because his dad is shipped off. You never really see his dad except in home videos. And I think Woolsey kind of becomes a little bit of a mentor to him. And you mentioned that it feels like Joe Dante is recreating his childhood. Well, all of the monster magazines that Gene has, they belong to Joe Dante. He says he saved a ton on props by just bringing all of the stuff from his house. So I would assume the posters in the theater are Joe Dante's. So he really did just recreate that. And it's just this story of Gene kind of being a little lost and saying that the Dick Miller character and Vincent Price are like his friends. Like you really get sort of a lonely story in this, in addition to this fantastic movie opening and a Cuban Missile Crisis. So it really just does such a good job of combining all of these different elements to make this very cohesive and fun story, sort of under the umbrella of Joe Dante's style, which is awesome.
I was going to mention that in some ways it kind of reminded me of Milk Money, but not in a bad way. Just this idea that you kind of have quite a few storylines that you're trying to juggle within one movie. And the movie's not very long either. So you have a lot of these balls you're kind of trying to keep in the air and tell effectively. And I feel like Matinee does it a little bit better than Milk Money, even though, as you said, I do have a soft spot for that movie. But yeah, I think you do a really good job of giving everyone enough time to tell their stories within this pretty short runtime.
Since you mentioned Milk Money, Jericho Stone, who wrote the original script for this, also wrote My Stepbrother's an Alien, which was directed by Richard Benjamin, who directed Milk Money. So there's 6 degrees of separation on the show here. We can probably do that every week. It's kind of fun. Yeah, this really breathes. I mean, at the center of it, of course, is this paranoia and this Woolsey character. And just to talk about William Castle for a little bit, because that's really the whole reason I wanted to do this week is, um, I don't know if people even know who he is necessarily these days, but in that battle to get ticket sales in a time of television, he was the P.T. Barnum of film. I don't know that he went around door to door in this way necessarily, but he invented these gimmicks and would go to these openings, and then he would ship out these gimmicks to other theaters. And Joe Dante does a great job of sort of compiling many of William Castle's gimmicks for each film in this all into one feature. He famously, the Tingler has they had airplane wing de-icers that William Castle repurposed, put under the seats to buzz during certain parts of the Tingler. And you see in this that they have to sign a waiver when they go in with the nurse. So there's William Castle did that with one of his films where you had to have your blood pressure taken, and there was an insurance policy with Lloyd's of London where there was like $1,000 if you died of fright, and just all of these great gimmicks that are really put into this, and they're just such a reverence for William Castle. And John Goodman just nails it. I mean, he is such a showman in this, and was a big fan of William Castle. Apparently, he didn't need to watch any of the films
Oh,
that
was it?
Dante sent him or anything, so he just kind of knew the guy. And it's a good way to just segue into the cast, because he's just so good in this. This is kind of the beginning of him more as a leading man in a way. And I don't know that he always nails that necessarily. He's such a great quirky character actor, but that fits this role so perfectly.
Yeah, I really wanted to talk about Goodman because he really is kind of one of my favorite actors. I just think that he's in so many excellent roles, and is a little bit under the radar in that way, where I don't think people appreciate what diverse and interesting work that he's done. But it's this is a really interesting period of time for him, because it feels like he's growing into a new phase of his career, like trying to become a little bit of a leading man. But the movies are just, yeah, it's a lot of B movies, a lot of strange choices. I mean, he does Arachnophobia, he does King Ralph, which is a movie I always liked. He hooks up with the Coen brothers for the first time, does Barton Fink. He plays Babe Ruth in a truly terrible movie, which I really thought was a terrible movie. He does the voice of Frosty the Snowman in Frosty Returns. So it's just a really strange period of time. Then he plays Fred Flintstone
the next
a year later, and you just kind of feel like he's looking for something that he hasn't really found yet. He hasn't really hit his stride. So he's just in all these really strange projects.
Yeah, they kind of throw him to the front and center as a leading man during this run, but that's not necessarily where he shines as brightly. I mean, I still think he does a good job, but they're just quirky projects. But he's so good as like a sidekick or a character actor in the background who doesn't have a lot of screen time. I mean, this isn't that far out from The Big Lebowski, which is probably one of his, if not the biggest role that he's known for. And, he goes on to do the Blues Brothers, but even back in the...
Let's not talk about that at all.
Absolutely not.
Talk about that.
But
we'll forget that ever happened.
Back in '86, he's in David Byrne's film True Stories, where he's just quirky and fun and great. And when he's doing things like that, I think he's just he's the guy that you want doing that stuff. He goes on down the road to do it in the Bringing Out the Dead with Nick Cage, where the two of them are like driving ambulances, and that's the kind of stuff that he's so good at. He really just he has versatility, though. I mean, he's charming, he's affable, and of course he's doing this run of Roseanne during this time as well, and that's kind
That's
of where
right.
he's known. But my question is, where is John Goodman's Oscar? Because how does this guy not have an Oscar by now? He's just so good.
I mean, I think he should have won for the Big Lebowski, but before we
Yeah.
even get into that, I mean,
There's so many
it's
things.
one of the best performances by anybody.
Yeah. Yeah, I just think he's really a national treasure, and seeing him as William Castle is so perfect because he just has that energy, and it's down to like the silhouette at the beginning of the film, which is kind of the logo of William Castle, of him sitting in the director's chair, and they just really encapsulate all of these things that William Castle did in his time. And a couple other people in the cast. Simon Fenton, who plays Gene. I don't really know him from anything else, but he's very good in this, and he's actually British, which is kind of wild because
Is he
yeah,
really?
he really nails the accent. Um, Kelly Martin from Life Goes On, the TV show, is in this as well, and she's pretty great. Everybody has this 50s heightened acting style in this. I mean, Dante really directs them in a way that's like, uh, a little elevated compared to how you would be in real life. And Ed Wood has the same thing. So it's really like doing a great job of just sticking to that time and capturing what film was like in that time. I want to mention Lisa Jacob, who plays Sandra, because she is one of my favorite people in this film. She is a great representation, actually, of like the transition between sort of the buttoned up 50s and the more radical 60s. And her parents, I mean, she calls her parents by their first names. She protests the air raid drill, which is just a fantastic scene. Uh, and then she's actually Mrs. Doubtfire the same year, which is pretty crazy to me. So I don't know that she's done a lot beyond that I'm aware of, but this was a pretty solid year for her. Joe Dante works with a troupe of people generally, and Dick Miller and Robert Picardo are two of those people. John Sayles actually, he plays Bob in this. He writes some of
Yeah, I
those
didn't
films.
know. I wasn't aware of the connection between Dante and Sells, but that's why Sells ended up in this movie. That apparently they've been working together for a while up to this point. I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, everything Sayles writes for him, Dante puts him in the film. And Dick Miller's in basically every film Joe Dante's ever made. You might remember him from our After Hours episode where he was the in the diner. He was working in the diner. Just a fantastic character actor who's been around forever. I really, really love him so much. Um, yeah, there's just this great group of people. Robert Picardo, who plays the theater manager. He was in Inner Space. He was in just a handful of other Dante films, Gremlins 2. So I really love, there's kind of a shorthand with Joe Dante and working with this group of people that are always kind of on the same page and always really bringing that tone. Joe Dante reminds me a little bit of Sam Raimi in that there's this style that he brings no matter what the project is, and it's always a little quirky, and it's very vivid and sort of like textural. And Joe Dante does a great job of that in everything he makes. In this in particular, the way he recreates the 50s with a lot of the tinting, there's like a lot of the red and green lighting, which was very prominent in these old atomic age films. That reminded me of Creepshow, which I watched recently, which has this very dramatic
Yeah,
lighting to it. Um, but yeah, this is just a really fun and exciting film to watch for me.
yeah, and again, as I said, it's like a movie for people that love movies because yeah, Dante's doing a lot of little things that are nods to things that he loves, and you'll only recognize them if you know them. You'll see all these little tricks that he does. Even a nice little animation sequence that he throws in in the movie, which I really appreciated. So there's just all these subtle little things that he throws in that make the movie, breezy and fun.
Yeah. To your point about this being for film people, uh, the way I can determine that is if there's a physical media release of it. And I actually watched this on physical media. This is a Shout Select from Shout Factory. It's a 4K, really beautiful edition of the film with a ton of special features. So I always find that when there's a really carefully curated physical media release, it's kind of like for the people who are going to buy physical media. And I think this film is really one of those films that's kind of falls into that category. So you're absolutely right. People don't necessarily feel that nostalgia for movie going or B movies the way people who love movies do, you know. Uh, Ed Wood has a Blu-ray release, but it doesn't even have a studio on it. It just says blue, like Blu-ray. It's, I don't even know where it came from, but I paid $8 for it. So at least there's something. Do you have anything else you want to talk about with this? Done by my William Castle tirade, and I'm
Yeah, I was letting you roll on this one, honestly. As I said, I think I was watching it for the first time, and what I found is that I was pleasantly surprised by just how enjoyable it was. And again, taking something that was pretty dark. I mean, that's what I wonder, watching this now. I didn't get a chance to watch this with my family or anything, but I do wonder how modern audiences would take to watching something centered around the Cuban Missile Crisis, which is, very specific to the people that live through it. And I think it's a very hard thing to grasp, um, just how much danger there was that period of time. And we had the tail end of that a little bit, where we did some of the nuclear, tests where you hid under your desk and all of that. So we have a bit of a
yeah.
memory of it. But nowadays, I mean, it's completely lost to this generation of kids. So it's just hard to understand how close we really were to annihilation, and how fearful people really were about it, because it was real. I mean, now we just seem to create our own crises every day, but not with that level of peril. It's just a bit of a different feeling. The only other thing I wanted to say about it that made me laugh was the scene when the air raid drill happens, and they're in class talking about
Red
uh,
meat.
the proper
Yeah.
diet, like the meat diet. And it just made me laugh out loud, because I'm like, isn't it crazy how history repeats itself? I could imagine RFK Jr. must have been in that class learning about that meat diet, and it just stayed with him his whole life.
Yeah.
That's the first thing I thought about.
Yeah, it was like
Anyway,
stamina and iron. He's like, you want 3 servings
it
of
was
red
like
meat a
meat
day?
3 times a day, bacon for breakfast, pork sandwich for lunch. I was like, good
Yeah.
God.
As a vegan, that was fun to watch. Oh, it made me cringe. To your point about just the collective crisis that they went through, I was thinking about it a lot in the context of today, and we're just so scattered now that I don't know, who knows what's true about how imminent a threat from Iran is on this country. But if this were 1955 or 1962 or when this took place, uh, we should be terrified. Like it's a very scary thing, and we're just so separated now that I don't think there's any way to have that kind of collective fear anymore. It's just very interesting.
Yeah, not to get too deep into it, but it feels like we just exist in a place of unreality now at all times, because we're once removed in everything because of social media and because so much information is being thrown at us. It's just weird state of unreality where I don't think we know how seriously to take anything, and it puts everything at a once removed from where we are, and it's just a strange time to live in. And I think that part of it speaks to why this period of time, why movies were important. Not only were they fighting against TV, but movies were a true escape, because you were getting news that was very frightening, and this idea of being able to escape to a movie theater, to this place. And there's the scene where John Goodman talks about that, of kind of entering this theater and not knowing what you're going to get when you walk in, but getting this catharsis by being in there. And I do think the movies are truly an escape for this period of time, and that's different now as well, because everything feels like a movie, or like television, or uh, like a bit of a story.
Yeah, there's almost no escape anymore. I mean, you're in it because you're always on a screen, so it's like you're sucked into it in a way that's different than, the big thing with William Castle was trying to find a way to bridge the story on the screen and the theater going experience to bring you into it. And now it just feels like you're always in it because you're always watching something or you're always posting online. And it's sort of like, I don't know if it would be William Castle's dream to completely immerse you in a story, but it's almost gone too far, and it completely disconnects everybody, and that's really the opposite of what William Castle was shooting for with all of his gimmicks. Yeah, this is just a really fun movie and a great portrayal of a B movie director. I'm so happy I got to watch it again because I haven't dusted it off in a while, and it was just really fun to revisit.
Yeah, it was really fun to watch for what I think is the first time. Yeah, it was a cool little movie to watch, which I may end up watching again. I may show it to my kids and see how they react to
I
it.
would really love to know what your kids think about this because it feels like it's they could connect with it. I mean, kids in general. I don't know your kids, but I would think like the gimmicks of it would be fun to keep you invested in it and the style of it. If they like Gremlins, I would imagine they really like this. But just that sort of like the crisis itself looming over it, I would be curious to know how that lands with a young generation because, like I said, they don't have any understanding of what that means. So yeah, that would be interesting. I hope you show it to them. All right, well, let's move on to Ed Wood. This is another film. It's kind of a biopic, I guess, in a way, about another B movie director, famously the worst director of all time, as we mentioned. Um, it's from 1994, directed by Tim Burton, based on a book called Nightmare of Ecstasy by Rudolph Gray. But it was written by Scott Alexander and Larry Karaszewski. The two of them actually
Yeah, let's go with that.
write quite a bit together. Larry Karaszewski is kind of a big presence on social media. He's really fun to follow, and I really like him.
I'll just say that the screenwriters for this are fascinating to me because I mean they get started writing Problem Child, which is nuts to me, and then kind of to break out of that mold, feeling like they're being pigeonholed, they end up making Ed Wood. But the movie they make after Ed Wood is The People versus Larry Flint, and then they write Man on the Moon, and then they also make Agent Cody Banks. Like these guys are fascinating to me. The poles between which they work are probably some of the widest I've ever seen.
It really does cover a wide spectrum, but if you look at Ed Wood and Larry Flint and Man on the Moon, and they did Dolomite Is My Name, they really have found a bit of a niche in like the biopic too. So they're really good at
It's true
doing that.
They also wrote That Darn Cat, so I mean, where does that fit in? I don't know. It's just really strange to me.
Sometimes you have to step outside your comfort zone and what you know and write something different.
Or you got to make that money. You got to try to make that Disney money, I guess.
Larry Karaszewski, I don't think Scott Alexander's attached to this, but he might be. He wrote an upcoming film called King of the Jungle about John McAfee. Do you know him? The software guy, the McAfee antivirus guy.
Yeah. I mean, everybody. I get alerts from McAfee all the time.
Yeah. Well, he has a crazy story where there's all kinds of like crime involved with him. He was in some foreign country, he moved to like a jungle, and so
Really?
yeah, it's really going to be an interesting story. So I'm looking forward to that, and it's another biopic, like I said, that they keep doing. Let me give you a quick overview of Ed Wood. Because of his eccentric habits and bafflingly strange films, director Ed Wood is a Hollywood outcast. Nevertheless, with the help of the formerly famous Bela Lugosi and a devoted cast and crew of show business misfits who believe in Ed's off-kilter vision, the filmmaker is able to bring his oversized dreams to cinematic life. Despite a lack of critical or commercial success, Ed and his friends managed to create an oddly endearing series of extremely low-budget films. that's the thing that I really love about this is that there's such camaraderie to it. It's really like a portrayal of this group of misfits coming together to do something they enjoy doing. And it really has a tenderness to it, I think.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I think that it's hard not to see this movie through the prism of the director. And what's fascinating to me is that Tim Burton wasn't the first person that was supposed to direct this movie, and yet when you watch it, it feels impossible that anyone else could make it. Uh, and the craziest part is that the person that was originally attached to it was Michael Lehman, who had directed Heathers, which was very successful. But after Heathers, I mean, it's a lot of misses. We have to say he ends up directing. We talked about directors like this that are good technically at what they do, but don't necessarily have the vision to bring off their own stories. And this is a really good example of that. Uh, the reason that he didn't direct this movie is that he was directing Airheads, and before that he directed Hudson Hawk. And it just goes to show you that, like, I mean, can you imagine Ed Wood being directed by that person? And I think that it would have been a much more straightforward story, which probably would have ended up being completely flat. It would have been more of a standard movie, and I don't think it would have had any of the charm and quirk that makes this movie endearing. And Tim Burton's ability to relate to Ed Wood in that way about being kind of an outcast or a weirdo, trying to find your way and even befriending your idol. I mean, he ends up befriending Vincent Price, whereas in this movie, Ed Wood befriends Bela Lugosi. And so he's a connection to these things. And I think all of that comes through in the movie and it makes you like Ed Wood as a person almost and appreciate him as a filmmaker, even though it's terrible. And it takes a certain kind of filmmaker to pull that off, which to me, Tim Burton is kind of the only person I can see telling this story.
He really has a way of building worlds that have this heart to them and this charm, like you said, that there's like a tenderness, you especially see that in this relationship between Ed Wood and Bela Lugosi. I mean, it's actually really sad. I felt very sad watching this film for a lot of reasons, but it's also incredibly fun. And there's such a not a light touch to the filmmaking, but a light touch to the way the story's told through sort of a light tone. And I think Joe Dante gets that as well. I mean, both of these films, they're very distinct directing styles, but I think they approach them with just this kind of like loving hand and
That's
respectful
exactly
hand
right.
that really comes
Yeah.
across. Um,
Yeah. And in truth, I mean, Ed Wood, there's a story within Ed Wood, Ed Wood's biography that is incredibly dark. That you could have told it in a very different way. I mean, you have a person that dies of alcoholism at a young age that never has success, and you could tell the story through that prism, and it's a pretty sad story and a pretty dark one. Befriends. You think about it, you step back from a second. A completely out of touch human being makes these stories which no one likes and are terrible movies and befriends a washed up actor who's a morphine addict and ends up stumbling through all of these calamities. And you could make it that way and make a movie that doesn't have any lightness to it at all. But the way that Burton always saw this was as a hopeful story, because Ed Wood was hopeful almost in a delusional way up until close to the end of his life. And it was based on diaries that Ed Wood had written, and he said that there was just uh, such a hope to them, and that was the tone that Burton adopts in making the movie. And I think that choice makes all the difference.
it's really interesting when you look at Tim Burton because he has this sort of goth aesthetic to everything he makes, but there's always just this sweetness to it. Doesn't matter what it is. I mean, Edward Scissorhands, which he makes just before this with Johnny Depp, it it's dark. I mean, everything he makes is dark, but he finds a way to make it kind of bright through just the tone of it. And you're right. I mean, this is such a dark story in so many ways, and he doesn't convey that at all. It's really quite beautiful the way he does it. It I'm I'm not a big Tim Burton fan, but in watching this for some reason, I think there's a real connection to it. I think he has a way of making things kind of sweet, but I don't know that I always connect to them the way I did with this.
We can get into the Tim Burton of things towards the end of the pod when we talk about the history of everything. But yeah, I think that what he has, and in some ways, I don't want to compare it to John Waters necessarily, who obviously loved Ed Wood, but it's a way of finding beauty and appreciation in things that other people find ugly. And it takes a certain, just a person with a skewed view of things, and they can take that and find beauty in it and find humanity in it, and find a way to make us care about things that in a different context we may not be able to understand. And there's definitely uh there's only a few people that can pull something like that off, and he has been one of them.
It's funny you mentioned John Waters because he's almost like the premier William Castle fan and actually played him in that feud show with Joan Crawford and Betty Davis.
Well, that's
Yeah,
right. I saw that show. I forgot about
yeah,
that.
it's really funny.
Right. But yeah, so Waters is connected to both of these guys in
Yeah,
a way because he is someone who really appreciates the underdog and the outcasts, and so that's what I mean. Their ability to make you see these people in a different light, where you may just dismiss them out of hand, is the what makes them successful, that they can find that way to turn the lens and make you see things in a different light.
it's really such a sympathetic portrait of these people, especially Ed. But it, I it does a great job of showing how hard it can be to be, and it can be a filmmaker, or it can be anybody who's pursuing something like a passion. uh, it's an uphill battle, 9 times out of 10, it's a lot of hard work and you're going to get a lot of doors shut in your face. And I think Tim Burton probably went through that, like most filmmakers did, I'm sure. Obviously William Castle did. I know Joe Dante did, but this is such like you really root for them in this. And you know, you know that the films he's making are terrible, but that doesn't matter because this story is about an underdog who you really want to see succeed, even if what he succeeds at making is garbage. And it's just
Yeah,
beautiful.
I love the idea that we get to see the early films that he makes, where they're in their own little bubble and able to convince themselves that what they're doing is good work. But when he makes Plan 9 and has the outside,
Yeah.
funders who are part of the church watching, they're like, and they're us essentially, like, what are you doing? Like,
Yeah.
this is all terrible. You have no idea what you're doing. But he steps back from it, and rather than taking the notes, actually just doubles down on this insane vision that he has of what he wants to do. And I don't know if that's good or bad, honestly. I mean, it's presented in the movie as a triumph in a way, but is it? I don't know. I mean, maybe because we're living through uh people who manifest success in delusional ways right now, to you know to just to be as vague as possible
Yeah.
about it. I just feel like that's the world we're living through right now, where we're living through the world of people who are just trying to manifest victory no matter what. It made me see Ed Wood in a slightly different way, I guess. But the stakes here are lower, where he's just making films, and you can live in that delusion. And in some ways, to be a filmmaker, you have to live in that delusion. But it can also be dangerous to not take in any outside notes. It can be problematic.
I think William Castle sort of fell into that too. I mean, generally, his films themselves aren't considered masterpieces. What he's remembered for is the gimmicks that marketed them. So it's not necessarily his ability as a filmmaker that people talk about. And yeah, I mean, when you're embarking on making a film, it's such a big and heavy lift that you have to be sure of it. And if you're in the middle of it, I mean, you have to believe in it to get it done. And sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. But it feels like that's an art form to which you really have to commit if you're going to shoot for the stars with it. And, even if it's like having an ugly kid, I guess if you, if your film's bad, you don't want to, it's still your kid, even if it's ugly, you love it. So, yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, I don't know. I really wonder how I would react to having an ugly kid, but I don't know. I have a hard time lying about things.
Let's talk about Johnny Depp. He's perfect for this. And I wonder if somebody else would have directed it, if he would have been involved, and what that would have looked like if he weren't. Because that's really the translation of Tim Burton's vision on screen, I think, is the way Johnny Depp performs in this.
Yeah. Um, this would be hard for younger people to kind of realize, I guess, nowadays. I mean, Johnny Depp's name is seen very differently now than it was, 20 years ago. So it's kind of hard to convey like just what a impressive actor that he was, like how respected he was for what he was doing. And this is the beginning of him on a true heater of just making interesting projects and being really good in a lot, and just consecutively in a lot of movies. After this, I mean, he made Don Juan DeMarco this same year, which is a movie I always kind of liked, and he's excellent in that as well. And yeah, I know it's insane. I mean, I know it's a crazy movie.
Isn't that
which
like
a lot of people think is terrible?
Marlon Brando and
there was
Faye
just
Dunaway?
something about him in that movie. Marlon Brando's in that movie, yeah, and he plays this Spanish Lothario in it. It's just a strange movie, but yeah, I liked it. I'll go on record. So, yeah, so he just took on all these quirky parts and knocked them out of the park.
But I think is speaking of John Waters, the first film role that I remember him being kind of a lead in is Crybaby. And I think that sort of set the tone for the projects he would take. I mean, you have this, you have Edward Scissorhands, Eddie and June, What's Eating Gilbert Grape. Those are all, and this is sort of the era of fun independent films too, in the mid 90s. But those roles are not Captain Jack Sparrow, which is actually also kind of quirky in a weird way, but it's a studio film, franchise. But yeah, he really suits the Tim Burton energy because he's such a quirky dude. It's really a great pairing. Like, you think about directors who have somebody with whom they click and put them in a ton of stuff, and these two really feel simpatico in the vision, and what he does here is just really, really good. Also, talking about Martin Landau, who won an Oscar for his portrayal of Bela Lugosi in this. Believable. Was this his last film? I don't think so, but it was not too far off.
No, it
Well,
wasn't.
no, I know he was in Rounders at least in '98, but just nuanced here. I mean, he goes from the thing that, like, I think that this film has. Well, we're going to talk about tone and consistency later, and I think that this has just a straight shot tone to it. But I think Lugosi, the Landau portrayal of Lugosi, has these nuances to it that sort of step outside of that linear tone, because he's playing, he's angry all the time, which is kind of funny, but he's still just playing this anger, and he's sad. I mean, he's really, really sad. And then you get this moment of joy that feels like out of character for him. And in a film where everybody's doing a good job of keeping that Tim Burton energy and tone, where even the darkest things are treated kind of lightly, you have Martin Landau really showing range, and it's an Oscar-worthy performance. I don't know who else was nominated that year, but he deserved it. Just a beautiful portrayal.
Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah, I mean, the cast is, everyone in the cast is truly great. I mean, Bill Murray is such an odd choice, kind of him being in the movie, and he suits this role really, really well. And even Sarah Jessica Parker. I mean, she's in this, and she's she ends up in Mars Attacks as well. I really like this period of Sarah Jessica Parker where she's kind of making these strange, weird little movies till she becomes, Sex in the City, Sarah Jessica Parker in a way, and just takes a completely different path. But this kind of shows that for a while she was willing to be in some pretty interesting roles, which was fun, and she was good in these. I miss seeing her in these kinds of roles.
She's really good at that 50s level of like a little heightened acting in this and Mars Attacks. I think she really gets that just a little extra to be on screen. It's really, really good. And just a really big and interesting cast. I mean, you have Jeffrey Jones, who we don't really talk about anymore, but also fun in this role. You have Lisa Marie as Vampira, who was such an interesting character. I don't know if you ever saw any of the Vampira TV show, but
I didn't. What I learned from this movie, which is obvious, is that she tried to sue Elvira for stealing her whole look. And obviously, we grew up in the Elvira period and didn't even know Vampira existed. So I learned from this movie when I saw it in '94 that was the case, and that was pretty shocking to me. I don't know how she didn't win. I have no idea how she didn't win when she sued Elvira for basically stealing her whole act.
yeah, I've gone back and watched some of her stuff. She made a movie too, and she's great. I mean, she comes from, I forget where she comes from, somewhere in Europe, but she's definitely not quirky and like bubbly the way Elvira is. She's very sort of stern and like more of a vampire sort of feel to her, which is, I mean, the way Lisa Marie portrays her in this film, it's pretty great.
Yeah, I mean, a couple other people in the cast. I mean, George the Animal Steel, obviously, who plays Tor Johnson, which is so crazy. I mean, people like us, especially me, who grew up watching wrestling in the 80s. I mean, George the Animal Steel was quite the character.
Did he have a green tongue?
He did have a green tongue sometimes. Yeah.
I just remember he was very
he had a
hairy.
big feud with the Macho Man. I remember all that. That was crazy. That was WrestleMania 3. WrestleMania 2 or WrestleMania 3.
It was a big deal that he was in this film. I mean, you hadn't had a ton of wrestlers in films yet. I mean, I know you had some in the 80s, but
yeah, he was a pioneer.
Yeah. I mean, of course you had Hulk Hogan and Rocky, but that was about it.
Right. That's fair. But yeah, I mean, in a way, this part was bigger than the part that Hulk Hogan plays in Rocky 3, if you think about it.
And he's so fun. I mean, they don't ask very much of him other than being himself, I say.
Yeah. You can see kind of how wrestlers can relate to being actors in that way. Because, yeah, it's a very similar idea.
They're just acting.
But a young Vincent D'Onofrio plays Orson Welles in this.
Very good.
His small little cameo. And it's good. But what I wanted to mention was that the voice of Orson Welles, though, is not Vincent D'Onofrio. It's a guy named Maurice LaMarche who does the Orson Welles voice. And the reason that matters is that for a certain segment of people, which includes me, Maurice LaMarche is probably best known as the voice of the Brain in Pinky and the Brain. And when you hear that, you could absolutely hear the Brain in his Orson Welles. That's kind of like where he got it from. It's like a short walk from the voice of Orson Welles to the voice of the Brain. And the Brain is one of the great, one of my favorite cartoon characters of the 90s. So if you never saw Pinky and the Brain, it's great. It's about these two lab mice, and the Brain wants to take over the world, and he always comes up with these cockamamie schemes to take over the world. It's very funny.
So funny. No, I've never seen it.
Yeah. Yeah, he was a stand-up comedian back in the 80s, Maurice LaMarche, and he did a ton of voices. I remember he did an Edith Bunker and a bunch of other people. Yeah, he was a really good, voice guy, and ends up falling into doing cartoons.
Yeah, that's where it's at in the 90s and 2000s, is that voice work and cartoons. Shout out to Mike Starr, who plays the head of the first film studio here, because we saw him, I think, was it last week? He was in The Natural, or the week before. Also one of the players in The Natural. So fantastic character actor who shows up in all kinds of stuff and really always kind of an angry dude, but always knocks it out of the park. Patricia Arquette's in this, and basically playing a more tolerant version of Dolores, the Sarah Jessica Parker character. She looks exactly like her, so it's a kind of an interesting role. Not a lot of screen time, but an important role nonetheless.
Yeah, something a little. I mean, it's you think about this period of time for her. I mean, she'd done True Romance, and in some ways, it's slightly similar to that. She just plays a very sweet, understanding character. I mean, obviously, her work gains a lot more depth as we go on, as she as the years go on.
She discovers
But
David Lynch.
yeah, she's really engaging. Right, it's probably had a lot to do with it. Yeah.
The woman who plays Loretta King, who is the kind of off the bus country bumpkin who wants Sarah Jessica Parker's role. That's Martin Landau's daughter. I don't know if you know that. Uh, Her name is
Didn't know
Juliet
that, huh?
Landau, and she also played Drusilla on Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I don't know if you remember. She was teamed up with Spike from like way back then.
Holy cow!
Yeah,
I right, yeah,
I
okay.
love her. I think she's just awesome. That doesn't do a ton of stuff, but this was kind of a time where she was doing a little more stuff, and it's kind of cool that she was in a movie with her dad and he won an Oscar. What a neat thing. I just think that's kind of a sweet story. Uh, Anything else you want to mention, Ed Wood? I don't have a ton more to say about it before we go on to the head to head.
It's not no, not too much to say about it. I think yeah, I think we can leave it there, honestly.
I think the head to heads where this is really going to be fun to talk about because these are similar in a lot of ways, but they're also very unique to themselves. So, um, as far as story effectiveness goes, they're two very different approaches to telling a story of a B movie director in a way. And which one do you think does a better job of telling its story?
Hard to say. You're right. It's a difficult choice. I do think I would give it to Ed Wood just because, as I said before, I think that Matinee is juggling quite a few storylines, and I could have used a little more of some of them. Because it's a short movie, they're trying to cram a bunch of stuff into a really small window, and there's the fallout shelter part, and there's all these other things that are going on within it. Uh, Maybe just because Ed Wood has a little more time to establish uh, all the little quirky little characters within its world. I think he does a good job of that, of creating this ensemble a little more than Matinee does.
That's a good point. I was thinking about how there are all these different elements to Matinee and questioning whether they cohere in a solid way. And uh, yeah, it's a little all over the place. I mean, it feels like it's all just getting to Mant in a way, which is fine. But
Right.
yeah, there are some elements that sort of kind of come and go and maybe make it a little jarring. The bunker is a great example of that. Ed Wood is really sort of a linear story about a moment in time in this guy's life, and it does a great job of that. Even though it's probably like 20 or 30 minutes longer, and it doesn't have as much variance of the stories it's telling, I think it moves well and it does a great job. So yeah, I was thinking Ty initially, but you've kind of convinced me that Ed Wood is probably the way to go on this. So yeah. What about characters? This is tricky because they're just filled with characters all across the board.
Yeah, it is tricky. I have to say, Matinee has a lot of characters, and I actually like them, but I feel like the characters in Ed Wood are more memorable. I mean, even as we're talking about them, when we were talking about the cast, we forgot to mention Kathy Moriarty, which
Right.
is
Right.
crazy.
And Matinee.
By the way,
Yeah.
who is really funny in this movie. I really like
Yeah.
her, and I like when she's the nurse and people come to her with ailments, and she's like, "Oh, that looks bad."
Yeah.
She just moves on. Like her delivery of those lines makes me laugh every
Yeah.
time. Like I thought it was very
Yeah.
funny.
She's good.
Um, but yeah, again, I think that Ed Wood just does a better job of drawing more characters a little more richly. Um, and so in terms of characters, I think Ed Wood probably takes it for that one as well,
I'm with you.
but only by a hair.
I'm with you. I find, because I love William Castle so much, the Woolsey character is just pitch perfect to me. But
Yeah, he's great.
there's just not a lot of stuff around him that's all that engaging in the same way that you're not as invested in, say, Harvey, the poetic criminal, as you are like these people in Ed Wood. So yeah, I think as much as I love just about everybody in Matinee, I think Ed Wood does a better job of presenting these characters to you with depth and connecting you to them a little more. So yeah, Ed Wood for both of us there too. This is really interesting because I love Matinee so much. Um, Tone and consistency. We talked about this a little bit, but which one do you think nails this better?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, because we already kind of talked on this because Matinee's dealing with so many tones. Ed Wood is obviously a pretty standard story. So I mean, based on tone, it probably wins. I'm saying it's a good thing or a bad thing, but yeah, it's definitely more consistent because it's dealing with one period of time and one group of people, and so it can be that way.
I think its consistent tone really helps to move it along for what's kind of a long film. It's over 2 hours, but it never feels like 2 hours. I was actually dreading sitting down to watch it because Matinee is like an hour 40 or something, and I thought, man, now I have to go sit and watch, like, which is fine. I don't know why I'm complaining about it, but uh, it really didn't feel like 2 hours, and I stopped and started it a couple times. So yeah, that really does a great service to moving it along because of that. So we are in agreement again. The last
Look at
question.
us.
Yeah. Cultural staying power and iconic scenes. This one I think is a little tricky because I don't know that either of them have a lot of it.
I mean, yeah. I mean, that's fair. I guess the only reason that Ed Wood would have more staying power is because it won an Oscar. I mean, that probably keep it in some conversations, no matter what, right? Um, so for that reason, yeah, it was shocking kind of how much Matinee's off the radar. I mean, I guess it didn't do that well, but yeah, I was. It really feels like a lot of people do not know this movie exists, unfortunately.
Yeah, neither of these made any money, and just to sort of punctuate the cultural staying power. Um, on Rotten Tomatoes, Matinee has, and this speaks exactly to what you were saying about it being a movie for film nerds. It has a critics rating of 93, which is amazing, and an audience rating of 64. So there's quite a discrepancy there between critics and a general audience. Ed Wood, on the other hand, has a 92 critics rating and an 88 audience rating. They're definitely, the audience is more connected to this. I wonder if it's not because Tim Burton is kind of more of a contemporary director and Johnny Depp is such a star. I don't know that younger people in particular are as attracted to John Goodman or Joe Dante because they're probably not as aware of those guys. So I would be curious to know if younger people either know Ed Wood, the director, or William Castle, the director, because they probably don't know either of them. I would think young people probably saw the film Ed Wood and had no idea who it was. It could have just been fiction. So, uh, I, yeah, it's just kind of an interesting thing to think about. But yeah, I'm with you. Even though I don't think either of these really has a lot of cultural staying power, they both lost money. Um, Ed Wood, just because of, I think, Tim Burton and Johnny Depp, makes it sort of more relevant today. And yeah, that's where I land on it too. So we're both, by the way, 2 Oscars for Ed Wood. Rick Baker won for makeup, and he also did the makeup on Matinee. So he's a connection between these 2 films, which is pretty interesting. Okay, so
Could definitely see Rick Baker as the kind of person who knows both of these filmmakers and likes
yeah,
them. I definitely get the feeling of that.
I watched a thing on the production of Mant, like just the Mant film itself inside of Matinee, and just the attention to detail of that suit and the things they went through to make it, almost in the way they try to go through making the octopus at the end of Ed Wood. There are a lot of motors and sticks and moving of these arms and things, and they're so worried about the antennae moving properly. And uh, I would say that Mant is a better produced send up of the 50s films than the actual 50s films.
I'm glad that you said that. I felt exactly the same way. I felt like I could definitely sit and watch Mant. Like I
Yeah.
would really enjoy watching that movie.
Also, we didn't mention this, but they spoof a Disney film basically with the shopping cart. My uncle's a shopping cart or whatever in the middle of Matinee with the flourishing young star Naomi Watts in it. But there's actually they shot that I think in CinemaScope to get that Disney feel to it. So there's such an attention to detail in the filmmaking of the films inside of Matinee that I really love. Um,
I'm a sucker for film within a film.
yeah,
So I always enjoy that because I find that that's really where you get to see filmmakers. It kind of show their true passions, where
yeah,
they get to make recreations of the weird, dumb movies they like. Because we always discussed, my favorite thing is finding out what terrible movies people love.
yeah.
So that's why I always appreciate that.
All right, let's move on. Kind of know where we're both headed here, but we have to ask our 5 questions for the weeks. These are some questions we ask every week that might help us to figure out where we're going to land if we don't know already. So question number 1, which film is more rewatchable?
That's a really tough question. I feel like Matinee is more rewatchable just because it's shorter, and it's a little less. And again, I think like within Ed Wood, there's just like a sorrow to it. It's a little dark. Um, and even though Matinee is about the friggin' Cuban Missile Crisis, somehow it's a lighter movie. So I actually think it's an easier rewatch.
I'm 100% in agreement. I mean, I love Matinee. It's I love Goodman, I love Dante, I love William Castle, and now I love these atomic age films because it's all I'm going to watch. It's Ed Wood is a little less complex, and the story moves sort of more linearly, as we mentioned. But yeah, I'm going to sit down for Matinee every time because it just feels like a lot more fun, and that's kind of the point of it, I think. So definitely gonna rewatch Matinee over and over again. Like I really will. I'm gonna keep it out and just revisit it. Okay, question number 2. Would you want to hang out with one of the leads from either of these films?
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely want to hang out with Lawrence Woolsey. I think that would be a really good
100%.
time.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not really sure I want to hang out with Ed Wood. He's a little too delusional for my taste. Um, it might be good for a night, but I don't know if like consistently. But Lawrence Woolsey, I would hang out with all day.
Yeah. Obviously, I would. I actually wrote Woolsey all day for that, but I might hang out with Ed and Bella too. Like the 2 of them together, they kind of make a good comedy team. I would love to see the banter.
Yeah, maybe together. Apart,
Yeah. Is this a career peak or valley for any of the main players?
yeah, I think we talked about it before when you mentioned it. It might be a career peak for Lisa Jacob because I mean she makes Matinee and she makes Mrs. Doubtfire in the same year, and after that she does a few things, but nothing as big as those. I mean she's in Independence Day as well a couple of years later, but I still think that this may be her career peak.
Yeah, I agree.
And this may be, oh, and this may be controversial to say, but I was really thinking about this and wondering if in retrospect, this really was the career peak for Tim Burton.
Oh,
And I don't
interesting.
know, like I just keep thinking about it where he makes this is where he's on a run of making films that are truly films that only he can make. And he, whether they're successful or not, I mean, he's making truly original things and bringing his own style to it. And again, I feel like Ed Wood is a movie that only he can make. 2 years later, he makes Mars Attacks, which I like but don't love as much as I love Ed Wood. And after that, he gets into this weird remake thing where he just is now doing nothing but remaking old movies, and he's bringing the Tim Burton style to it, which they always say. But it feels once removed and a little sad almost to watch him trying to just revive all these old properties rather than do something truly original. And so I don't know. In some ways, I think this may have been kind of the peak for at least a Tim Burton that we really love.
I would say Tim Burton's peak is in 1992 when he plays the next Martin Scorsese in Singles. That would be my guess. But that's just me. Uh, yeah, I mean, I'm in agreement with Lisa Jacob. And I see what you're saying about Tim Burton. I mean, just looking over he leans into the animation stuff after this for a while and then gets into like the Alice in Wonderland stuff and Dumbo and yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it almost feels a little bit like Shane Black, how The Nice Guys was kind of like the last thing he did that was all his, and then he gets into the other stuff like that.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, it just feels like Burton had more freedom here. I mean, just think about the run of Edward Scissorhands, Batman Returns, and Ed Wood, and you're like, he never got the freedom to do those kind of projects again.
Yeah, I think you're probably right then. Uh, the eternal question: would one of these films be better if Steven Spielberg directed it?
I mean, Ed Wood 100% no. Is it possible that Spielberg could have directed a version of Matinee and made it decent? Yeah, I actually believe that. I mean, he's of the same period. I mean, he probably has a love for those B movies as much as anybody. I mean, that's where Raiders of the Lost Ark literally comes from. Uh, so maybe could he have made Matinee? Yeah, I definitely think he could have. I think you feel Joe Dante's love for it so much that I don't know if someone else could quite put the same heart into it. But could Spielberg have made a passable version of Matinee? Yeah, 100%.
I always think of Joe Dante as a little edgier version of Spielberg in a way. I mean, he's
Yeah, I
all
agree.
about that nostalgia. He works with kids a lot. Great cast of kids in this, like the way Spielberg is able to do. But yeah, I just think there's something that Joe Dante brings that's a little more of that B movie quality that's so perfect for this that I don't know if Spielberg could have had. But yeah, I mean, it almost checks all the boxes of a Spielberg film anyway. So
Yeah, surprisingly it does. Like I hadn't really thought about it until you asked. Although I know these questions are coming every week, but I hadn't really thought about the Spielberg thing until just now. And it's true, it checks a lot of Spielberg boxes. But yeah, that the I don't think that Spielberg loved that them quite as much as Joe Dante did.
yeah, there's a
Was it them or they? I can't remember. It was them. Yeah,
them.
the M
Yeah,
movie. Just called
there's
them.
a line that Bela Lugosi has when Ed Wood first meets him about how the monsters used to be the monster movies are the great thing, and these days it's all giant bugs and spiders, and it just feels like he's
Yeah, that's
directly
right.
calling out Mant in that moment. It's
Yeah.
pretty great. Um, okay, last question: would either film be better if you swapped lead actors?
No. John Goodman as Edward would certainly be interesting, but not better. No.
I think they both bring something so specific to the real life people, like portraying these particular real life people, that it's like perfect casting in both cases, and I don't think swapping them would be beneficial in any way. I can't even imagine. I mean, I can't imagine anybody playing Lawrence Woolsey except John Goodman at this point. All right. Well, I think we know where we're going to go, but before we determine our winner, let's take a look at the online polling results. This is where I tell you that every week you should follow us at Movie Throwdown Pod on social media. Participate in our polls. Help us determine what will win next week. And this week, only 20 votes, but we'll take it. What do you think won this week?
I have to say it would be Ed Wood. I just think name recognition alone. I don't think a lot of people have seen Matinee, I would guess.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. 16-4 Ed Wood over Matinee. I really want to go on a campaign for Matinee because it feels like it's just so underappreciated. And I think right now is a great time for it to come back. I don't even know why that is, other than like the gimmickry of selling a movie, but I just think it could be really appreciated right now. Maybe I'll write something about it.
Matinee is your Sing Street. It's just this movie that you know is good, that you just feel like if it has more eyeballs, that people will appreciate it more.
100%. So what is your winner for this week?
After everything that we talked about, I still think my winner of the week is Matinee because I've never seen it before, and it was a pleasant surprise, and I really enjoyed it.
Good. I obviously am completely biased, and 100% Matinee is my winner this week. There was no way Ed Wood was ever going to win out if there's a film about William Castle for me. But I did appreciate going back and watching Ed Wood again with a little bit more of a critical eye because there's a lot of beauty in it. And there's a little bit of sadness, but it's a really good film and a lot of fun. So I'm very happy that I got to watch it again. But yeah, our winner for this week, though, is Matinee. So if you haven't seen it, please go watch it because, as we just said, underseen and it's a real hidden gem. You'll love Joe Dante. He's so good. I have a new 4K of Inner Space headed my way that comes out next month. I'm very, very excited about because I think this is sort of inspiring me to go back and just lean into his work because he's just so fun and so good. But in the meantime, that's it for this week. Let's talk about next week's episode. We're going to round out April with a really, really fun one. It's a battle of the big time slapstick comedies from 1980. We're going to look at Airplane against Caddyshack. This might be the most fun we've ever had on this show because I think it's going to be insane. So really looking forward to that. Okay. Then, yeah, that's it for this week. Again, join us on social media. Cast your vote for future episodes. We're at Movie Throwdown Pod on Instagram, Threads, and TikTok. And come back and join us next week when we talk about Airplane versus Caddyshack. And we'll see you then. So long.